Hello, everyone. Hello, MBA hopefuls. We're on the air live with MBA Waves, your weekly vidcast talking all things business and education. And every Tuesday, we bring you tons of tips to help you get into a top-ranked MBA program and getting you up close and personal with many of the schools. And today, a professor who we host on the show where you can get all your questions answered. And if you don't know MBA Waves, I'm Bara Sapir, and I am CEO of City Test Prep and MindFlow. This is a test preparation company, and MindFlow is an online speed reading platform. And usually I am joined by Eric Lucrezia from Candidate Coach. He's often the host. And Candidate Coach is a boutique admissions consulting firm, but he is on vacation. I don't even think he's watching us. I don't even know if he has Wi-Fi today, but he'll be joining us not next week, but the week after. And today I'm super excited because we're joined by Professor Aaron Ahuvia, who is a marketing professor at the University of Michigan Business School. So welcome, Aaron.
Hi, thank you. And just to be specific, I'm actually teaching at the University of Michigan Dearborn Campus Business School. I have also taught in Ann Arbor, but right now I'm at Dearborn, which is a separate but very fine program.
Right. And full disclosure, Aaron and I have known each other, I don't even want to say how many decades, but we're in the decades now in knowing each other. I met Aaron when I was in graduate school at the University of Michigan, also not at the business school, but at Rackham Art History program. So it's great to be able to have Aaron here because he just wrote a book that got published, which I think is going to come out backwards if I show everyone. Oh, no, it doesn't. It looks great. It's The Things We Love, How Our Passions Connect Us and Make Us Who We Are. So I'm excited to talk about this through the lens of a student and through the lens of a business school student going to business school, since Aaron has so much experience both with business school and then this idea of the things we love. So you want to tell us a little bit about the book and about, just an overview of it.
Absolutely. So the book is in some ways the first of its kind. And what the book does is it takes very seriously the psychology of love, and meaning the same, love, just like you love your family or you love your significant romantic love or the other different kinds of love. And people also love activities that we love to do and objects that we love, sometimes brands or products that we love. And it turns out that when you take love from an interpersonal context and then you map it onto your car or your cell phone, all kinds of interesting things happen. So I have been studying this for 30 years. And this is sort of my book, bringing it to a public audience in a hopefully engaging and accessible way. So that's what the book is about. And it does have some implications. I know the audience here are interested in business programs. And of course, I teach in the MBA program. We also have various master's degrees. Maybe we'll get to talk about the difference or pros and cons of the 2-year MBA versus these now increasingly popular 1-year, more specialized master's degrees, such as a master's in marketing that we've recently created, or we have others as well. And also just like how to pick a graduate program that you're going to love and how that really works.
It was, I do want to say this is very engaging and very accessible. Mm-hmm. And in some ways it reminded me, TJ Clark wrote a book, I want to say in the 1980s, called The Painting of Modern Life, where it really spoke about how the paintings that were made were painted in a way that depicted what was happening at the time, the Industrial Revolution, and things were moving more quickly and photography was happening. And so you wrote things in this book that were like, oh yeah, that's obvious. Wow, no one's written about that before. So I do want to say, like, it was really exciting to see that mapping that you're talking about. And in thinking about the mapping of, I kept going back to how is this applicable to a business school student, and how is this even applicable to a student? Because you have students who, they love their program, right? When I went to Michigan, they were like, we loved University of Michigan, right? There were so few people that weren't happy there. Like, it's one of the schools that's really known to be like that. So I do want to get into the weeds a little bit, because you didn't mention business schools in your in the book itself. So how do you think choosing a school fits into the paradigm that you put into the book?
Okay, so there's uh, the basic paradigm of the book. Uh, you could frame it as saying that, the things we love, we think they're excellent. That's kind of obvious. If you say to someone, I love your hat, what you're really saying, you don't love their hat. What you really just mean is, well, that's a really good hat. That's all you're saying. So one big element of loving things is that, we think they're really good. But that's just the first step. That's not where it gets interesting. It gets interesting when we say, yeah, but there's more to it. So what's this more to it? And the more to it is a deeper kind of personal connection. And you get that with objects or even with activities. The human brain did not evolve to have those kinds of deep personal connections with anything other than people. And so when we do, what we're doing is our brain is taking something that isn't a person and kind of treating it like it was. So maybe there's anthropomorphism, he looks like a person, but very frequently, and here's where we get to educational programs, business programs, other kinds of graduate degrees. Very often, the reason your brain is treating this activity or this program or this object like a person is because in your mind, you've connected it to a person. So, for example, if I've got my wedding ring here, right? I love my wedding ring, but when I say I love my wedding ring, what I really mean is I love my wife, right? The object connects me to her in that way. And there's a great consumer researcher, Russell Belk, with this wonderful phrase. He said, a lot of times when you start to talk to someone about a product that's important to them, it'll look like a person-thing relationship, like it's they're relating to the product, the person to the thing. But actually, what turns out to be going on every time is person, thing, person. So it's me and my wedding ring, and then my wife, connects me through to her. And so what you find in educational programs is they're the totally person thing person. It's the reason you love your alma mater isn't because of the bricks and the dormitories or the cafeteria, heaven forbid. It's because of the people that you met in this program and the relationships that you formed. And your attachment to the program is in many ways just a byproduct of the attachment that you have to the people that you met in the program. And if you allow me to go on here
Absolutely, yeah.
with another minute, I'll say, we have at the University of Michigan Dearborn College of Business some fabulous 100% online degrees. You can get an online MBA with us. It's one of the top rated in the country. If you are determined to get an online only degree, please look at ours. But if you are deciding between an online only degree and a degree that's going to let you meet and really connect with other people, go for the degree that's going to help you make those personal connections, because that is what's going to make the whole activity feel worthwhile. It's going to be meaningful to you. And when you're done, the information you'll have learned will be important, but those relationships will also be very important.
Yeah, I think what you're bringing up and talking about it's interesting even looking at it through the school's perspective, right? Like what you had written in the book, that colleges will often bolster their prestige by boasting their rejection rates.
Yes.
Right. And for the applicants. So do business schools, do you find, use that same
Oh my God, yes.
like how many people are not coming in? So if you get in, you're actually super special.
Exactly.
You're a special person.
It's like they say about nightclubs, right? That you judge the quality of the nightclub by the number of people it's not letting in, right? How big the crowd around the door is that wants to get in but isn't getting in. And that is sadly very, very true for all sorts of educational institutions. And even when you look at the ratings, the Business Week, top business school, whatever ratings, one of the major things they look at is the rejection rate. And they assume the higher the rejection rate, the better the school is. And so it's kind of sad.
It feels,
Really.
it feels like an inverse. And it's, as you're talking, I'm thinking about Rick's American. Uh,
Uh-huh.
I don't remember. I think it's on Forest in Ann Arbor.
It's
There was,
on Church Street, and
it's
I
on
worked there for years.
and it's amazing because when I was in college,
Yeah.
like the lines were always so long, and I'm from the East Coast, so I was like, I am not waiting online to go into a bar in Ann Arbor. So it's
As well, you shouldn't. You shouldn't
and
wait a lot to go.
but I did get in many times, especially as a grad student, and it was super fun, and great bands were playing there. So the other thing that I thought was interesting that you bring up is this idea of schools and online versus in person. Is that not only, I would imagine, it's the people that you meet, but it's also how it redefines your own purpose, and it helps to give you the skills to actually do the things that you want to do, become the leader that you want to become.
Yeah.
So I would also imagine that, as students are considering, or students to be MBA hopefuls are considering different programs, that they're looking at, how is this program going to help craft me to become the person I want to be, meet the people I want to meet, or give me the skill sets. So that I think is an interesting, it's an interesting problem for marketing departments of universities
Mhm.
to put that forward, to let students know. I don't know if you've looked at marketing materials from different schools, or if you've looked at the ones from University of Michigan. Do you notice anything in their marketing materials that
They,
that
they do, and that has a lot to do with the rise of these 1-year masters as opposed to the 2-year masters,
Mhm.
because you really do learn useful and important things in these programs. One of the things that I I tend to enjoy. If any of my beloved undergraduate students are watching this, cover your ears for just a second. But I tend to enjoy teaching the graduate courses a little more than the undergraduates. And the people in the courses are very similar. In fact, the people in our graduate courses are very much the same type of people in the undergraduates. They're just 5 years older, as it would be, or something like this, 5 or 10 years older. But in the undergraduate courses, people are under the illusion that the main thing they get out of the course is a grade, and that this grade is going to help them get the job. And if they get the good grade, they win. By the time they're in graduate school, they have figured out that you're actually learning things in this course. And if you actually know the material and understand and learn the skills, that will do much more for your career than the grade will. So, uh, yeah, and that makes the course a little bit more enjoyable to teach. Now, what you have there is you have these 1-year master's degrees that are usually discipline focused. We also have one that's for um, information data analysis, because data analysis is just huge now, and there's a lot of demand. If you want a safe major that's going to get you a job, learning data analysis is a very much a safe alternative. But we have them in different areas as well. I mentioned we just started one in marketing. We have them, I believe, in finance, a number of other programs. And what they do is they take basically the same courses as the MBAs take. People sit right next to each other in the same courses, but they just take all the marketing courses, and then you get the marketing degree in half the time. And what I like about that is it lets you stretch your education out a little bit. So what I think would be the ideal scenario would be to get an undergraduate degree, work for 3 to 5 years in some professional capacity, then go back and get one of these 1-year master's degrees, work for another 3 to 5 years in some capacity, then come back and take the other half of the classes you need for your MBA degree and call it an MBA and be out. And I think by spacing it out that way, you'll be more sane, a little less pressure, and better educated. because the people who learn the most and really get the most value out of classes are people who are working and using the material in the class as they work. So I've noticed, it's odd because the most ultra prestigious degrees are the full-time degrees where people like stop working and go for 2 years for an MBA. But I think the degrees where people learn the most are the evening degrees, where especially if you're not working you're not flipping burgers, you're doing something that uses your skills, and then you're taking the courses at night as you go along. Students come to me all the time and they say, the thing that we just learned, I was able to go and use that at work, and my boss was really impressed, and it really helped. And I'm thinking, A, what a nice warm fuzzy for me to get. That's wonderful. But B, how much more you're going to learn. You can actually remember that. Even after the final exam is over, you're still going to remember that.
Right. It becomes practical knowledge, right?
It becomes practical knowledge. It becomes something that stays with you.
Right.
And it's very valuable that way.
Well, what you're saying is super interesting. I feel like there might be room in the MBA space or the business space to actually create a container for what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Like I definitely have worked with students that do what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. More students are foreign, actually, that I've worked with that do this 1-year program and then go back to work. Yeah. But I wonder how that fits in with the idea of like your Rolodex and who you're meeting. And for those of you who don't remember what a Rolodex is, it's the thing of contacts on my iPhone. Yeah. But it's also interesting because so much of business school, like when you were talking about, you set up in your book like the conservatives and the bohemians and people who are creatives, and I was thinking about, I've been working with business school students now for, close to 30 years, and so there's certain types, right? And I have to say, I really love business school students. I love the folks that are going to business school. They're so driven. They're so exciting. They're very active people for the most part, very interesting. They run the gamut from like conservative financial degrees to like, NGOs and changing the world. So it's a really broad group of people, but almost all of them are athletic, which I think is actually really interesting. And many of them have played sports. So it's interesting that I have this perspective because of the students that I work with. But I'm curious, when we think about the student who's looking at business school, are they looking at, like, do they just like a business school because they're going to get the knowledge? Mm-hmm. And they don't care exactly who they're meeting, but like you said, they can go back to work and apply it immediately? Mm-hmm. Or do they go to a place and they just love it? And that becomes a totally new trajectory that they're on, right?
One of the nice things about graduate programs is that they let you start a new trajectory. Nobody really knows what their life trajectory is going to be like. One of the things that's increasingly common is that people have multiple careers, and not just multiple jobs, but like multiple careers as they go along. And everybody I know who's my age that I talk to, if they said, when you were 20, did you think you would be here? No, I went through zigzags, 4 different steps before I got here. And that's very much a process of self-discovery. Trying things, you really don't know until you've tried them, what you think. So, trying things and getting to experiment a bit. And a graduate program is a great place for that. That is one of the advantages of, say, an MBA program over signing up for a master's in marketing, is that if you sign up for a master's in marketing, you're going to get all the marketing classes, but you're not going to get much else. And if there was something else out there that might have been a better fit for you, you're probably not going to find out about it. But it is, on the flip side of that is, maybe you went into a certain area, some other area. It could be a business area. Maybe you were a chemist, who knows, some other area. And you really think you want to make a change in your career, you taking these 1-year programs can turn that ship. You've got that oil tanker that's hard to turn. Well, you can turn that thing faster than you might think possible.
Well, I'd imagine also, like, next, as a plug, I'll talk about it at the end of the show, but we're going to be talking with JD, thinking about the JD MBA programs. And
Right.
it feels to me like you really learn how to think a certain way in business school, and you really learn to think a certain way in my art history program. You
Right.
really learn to think a certain way in business school, law school. Like, all of these ways of thinking are different than, let's say, chemistry, where you're applying and moving deeper and deeper and deeper, and you're thinking through, and you have to think around and out of the box. But like, I loved graduate school more than undergrad for the same reason that you're talking about, that you talked about in the beginning. But it is interesting that, do you find that some students, just going back to the like and the love, like, have you spoken to some of your students in your data pool that had a nighttime schedule or a full-time schedule, that the people who were full-time loved it, or the people that were online loved it? What's the feedback that you've received?
This is a little bit of an informal guess, right? But my sense is that students who are only online don't love their programs that much. And part of that you can see in the high dropout rates for those classes. A lot of people start those classes and then they just can't get themselves to finish. And part of the reason they can't get themselves to finish is that we don't appreciate the extent to which our behavior is influenced by the people around us. That's kind of this invisible force that we don't think about. So if you're meeting with people, you're seeing people in the flesh, and it's like, oh, it's coming up to the midterms and everyone around you is studying for midterms. Well, then you study for midterms, right? But if that's not a part of your world, it's a lot harder for you to sort of go with things. In any event, I find those are, a little bit less loved. Hybrid programs where you do some learning online and some face-to-face do very, very well. I love teaching in those. The students love them. You get the best of both worlds to a large extent. So I'm a big fan of sort of a hybrid approach to this. And what I find is you get more loyalty from the full-time program. So people who took 2 years out of their life to get a full-time MBA, they feel like that university is just branded on their arm with a hot poker, right? It's just like this permanent thing that's there. There's a really strong connection because they sort of did nothing but that for 2 years and were with the people for 2 years. So I got to say, that's probably the most affection for the program itself comes in. But even though that's true, I think that in terms of the people who benefit the most from the program, sometimes it's the evening students, as I said, who do it while they're working full time.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I have so much school spirit after, even though it's been so long. In fact, yesterday, this isn't even school spirit. Yesterday, I got this in the mail. Maybe you recognize this? I got this.
Zingerman's, 40 years of Zingerman's. Absolutely.
I mean, wherever I live, I still, every now and then, especially during COVID, I did treat myself to a Zingerman's. A Zingerman's, for those of you who are watching, is just this like amazing deli, world-class deli in Ann Arbor that's been around for 40 years. And it's really like the Zabar's, but it's of Ann Arbor. And for a small town to have such a incredible place with creamery and a roadhouse, I mean, just great. So it's funny, like, I've got so much school spirit and Ann Arbor spirit, I still get these things mailed to me. One of the questions that came up for me when I was reading your book was this idea of perceived excellence.
Yeah.
And this idea of what happens when a student sees a school, they fall in love with it, but it's actually not in that sort of perceived excellence range. Or maybe US News and World Report doesn't rate them high,
right.
Forbes, whomever, doesn't rate them high. what is there a cognitive dissonance? Like, do they still love it as much?
There
Or
is a cognitive dissonance. It depends on the student. Right? So if the student comes from, this is a very big generalization, but sort of on average, if the student comes from a background where they are one of the first people in their family to get a graduate degree or an undergraduate degree, then their community is just proud that they just got that college degree and they don't care where it's from very much. And the person sort of partakes in that pride. But if they come from a very elite background, and everyone I know they know is going off to some Ivy League school, and everyone acts as if, oh my God, it's going to be a disaster. You're going to, instead of University of blank, you're going to blank state university, right? Which the usual rules are like University of Utah, University of Michigan, University of Florida is the higher ranking, and then Utah State, Michigan State, Florida State is one tier down. They act as if going to that one tier down university is some sort of a disaster. If those are the people around you, yeah, then people do have cognitive dissonance. They may really personally like it, and even love it and love the people they met there and feel proud of it, but they have a hard time feeling good about the identity that it creates for them. I think that's really sad. I think that's really too bad when that happens. Fortunately, if you're in that group of people, one good thing to realize is there aren't very many of you. I mean, I meet those people all the time where I work, but you're a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of the population. Most people are really pleased just to get into a good school. I also will say about this, though, and this might be useful when people are thinking about schools, that in my mind, there are three broad categories of schools. And both the super elite and the moderately elite all fall in the, I'm not dividing. You can take the top category and divide it into a whole bunch of smaller ones. But you've got this large top category. And what makes those schools the same is that their promise to students is, you'll get a better education here because our faculty are bigger experts than the next faculty. They know more than the next people, and they'll teach you more relevant, more useful information. And that's why those schools are so focused on research, because research is what creates that I'm an expert credential for their faculty. So those are the very research-focused schools, and those range all the way from Wharton or Ross at the very top to, any number of very good second-tier state schools. Like in Michigan, it would be Michigan State, which is an excellent university and, has an excellent research program and is in that same game. Then you go to the very opposite end, at the bottom end. You get a lot of schools that are for people who aren't very sophisticated about how they choose a university and really think that all they need is to have that MBA or master's degree after their name, and that is going to be their ticket. And what those schools sell you is, we'll give you those letters after your name for the lowest monetary price and expecting the least amount of work out of you. So it's just like, we're going to sell these things to you as cheap as possible. And that is, in my view, a scandal. And if you're listening, because a lot of people who get taken in by that are people who are, maybe the first in their family to go to graduate school or college, right? If you grow up in a community where, everybody just assumes like, oh, of course you're going to get a graduate degree, what's it going to be in? Then you sort of know you wouldn't go to one of those places. But if you don't grow up with that background, it can be really tempting. And I think people just get ripped off. Honestly, I think it's just a ripoff. I don't think it's benefiting people to do that.
Right. Right. I mean, I know that something, we don't get into politics in this show, but I do know that there was a scandal recently of a government lawyer or someone who actually just bought their degree, right? Like they were working in the highest echelons of our country's government, and yet they actually didn't go. They actually had they bought the letters behind their name. So I mean, it really runs the gamut, it runs this this wide range. I did want to bring up something. One of the things I find what's exciting to me about great books is that you read them and then all of a sudden you want to apply it to other things, right?
Yes.
Like you want to think about, oh, how does this relate to? And as I mentioned before, you talked about marketing can be either exciting or it could be sincere,
Yeah.
right? You talked about how people, and you even talked about relationships, like the hottie versus
Right.
the, being, that is settled or long term. So I
Mhm.
was curious because I haven't looked at all of the marketing material, but this definitely has given me incentive to check out different marketing material. Do you think that business schools in general go for like a sincere approach, or do you think they might go for an exciting approach, or both? Or how do you?
Right. So just to clarify for listeners who aren't familiar with the terms, we're talking about types of sort of brand personalities. So some products like the Corvette, obviously, these are exciting products, and other products are sincere. Like they'll really help you. All the insurance companies, right, with all their advertising, and you can tell the difference in how they're marketing the product because if it's got like cute animals and if it's got like music with strings, sentimental music, those are all ads for sincere brands, right? Whereas if it's got like pounding rock music in the background or dance music, this is trying to be an exciting brand. The business schools over if the first of all, many of the schools just don't even think that way, right? They don't even think of those terms, but there are some that do. And in fact, there's a consulting company that I'm familiar with that goes around to business schools and works on their sort of personality with them. But the personalities that they want can have a touch of excitement, but in this dichotomy, they're all sincere because sincere, it doesn't just mean sentimental, it means responsible and effective and value oriented and hardworking and all those sorts of attributes. And people don't want to invest in a graduate program that's going to be like fun. That's for vacation, fun and exciting, but not dependable. I mean, I do mountain biking as a hobby, and a mountain biking vacation is fun and exciting, but not always dependable. And that's great for a mountain biking vacation, but it's not what you want in an MBA program. Although there are some that do try and like, we're sincere, we're gonna help you get ahead, we're gonna care about you, right? But we do these exciting things, so they'll spice it up a little bit, on the side.
So I think also that the age of the business school student will approach this way, the way that the business schools present themselves differently,
Yeah.
right? And when you're talking about this paradigm of having the one year degree,
Yes.
go back to work, and then go back to business school for your MBA, like I wonder even if that same person over a 3-year change, they're going to approach business differently. And just the business marketing materials differently. And I wonder if they'll also, like, if there's also trends, like even post COVID, are business schools going to be looking at how they present themselves differently to applicants than they did before? I don't have the answer to that, but I wonder how COVID and being on Zoom calls
Yeah.
so much, what has that done to the program online at Dearborn? Has it increased because it's now really, it's normal for us to be online more?
Yeah. I'll tell you, when COVID came in, it was very interesting. Before COVID, we had online programs, but it was difficult to get people to teach in the programs because it meant you've already got all this course material and you've invested enormous amount of time in creating it, and now you've got to create this whole new thing, right? And nobody wanted to put the kind of work in, honestly, to do that. Then comes COVID, and all of a sudden you're teaching online. It doesn't matter what you want to do, and so everybody goes to all the work, and we all create these materials, and we all get it there online. And now we're back in the classroom, and the teachers are clamoring, we want to keep teaching online. We don't want to go back to the classroom. And the administration is saying, no, we want you to go back to the classroom. And I have to say that from the perspective of the students, I think back in the classroom makes a lot of sense. I do think you get more out of it. And I think from the administration, it does. But as a teacher, I can also understand why it's easier. I mean, I'd rather teach from home. Who wants to go for that commute when you can teach from your office at home here?
Or the beach, or or a mountaintop somewhere, right?
Or a mountaintop somewhere. Yes, that would be even nicer. I'll settle for this office I'm in now, but boy, a mountaintop would be great.
Right. I know. I keep thinking, because so much of the work I do is I could really be anywhere, but I do have my dogs tethering me to staying home because I miss them too much. Well, that's about all the time we have. Is there any last minute things that you'd like to share with the audience? This has been super interesting, and I do recommend folks to read this, whether they're planning business school this year or just learning about how we love things versus loving people, and the neuroplasticity and the neuroscience behind it. It's a really interesting book.
Thank you.
Is there anything you want to share?
I think I'm good. If any of you folks out there end up showing up at University of Michigan Dearborn, let me know. Come say hi. It'll be good. It'll be great to shake your hand now that we're post-COVID and I can do that.
Right.
Very good.
Right. Absolutely. So I do want to thank Professor Erin Ahuvia for joining us today. It was a pleasure to learn from you and gain some wisdom and from your experience. And don't forget to check us out next week, the same bat channel, same bat time. We're going to have with us a few experts on JD, that's law programs, and MBA programs. We have Anna Ivy. She's a admissions consultant for folks who are applying to law school. And we're going to have Andrea Sparry, who also has a consulting group, who works very often with the JD MBA, and David Lynch, who is a LSAT tutor. So it's going to be a really interesting discussion. So I hope you join us then as we explore that topic. And don't forget to email us if there's any topics that you'd like to explore together in a future episode, because we're here for you. And you can contact any of us. Our email is connected to the LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube channel, mbawaves.com. And Erin, thank you so much. It's great to see you.
It was always a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks.